Hey everyone, I'm your host Cadence, and welcome back to another episode of Project Honesty, a podcast designed for young adults, by a young adult, to gain brutally honest, friend-like advice, as well as provide a platform for young adults to form opinions, color outside of the lines, take deep dives into current events, and most importantly, have fun. This is Project Honesty, navigating reality with real conversations and diverse opinions. If you haven't already, go check out last week's episode called Voices Unheard: What Abuse Can Take Place Behind Closed Doors. This episode comes with a trigger warning because it's about domestic violence. Domestic violence is a complex issue faced by the majority of women. Women are the largest victims of domestic violence, and so in this episode, I unravel the term domestic violence, what it means, statistics around DV in Canada, and the negative impact DV has on a person. I also talk about the movie It Ends With Us, a popular film that brings strong awareness to DV and the reality for countless women. Take a listen to learn more. That is available on Spotify and YouTube, like always. And today's topic is an important subject, and it heavily connects to last week's episode about domestic violence. Today we're going to be discussing P. Diddy and the P. Diddy parties. We're going to be discussing what was happening, the charges that have been laid, what investigators found on Diddy's property. And not only are we going to talk about P. Diddy, we're going to talk about similar incidents that have happened like this in the past, and how an abuse of power, fame, and money is dangerous. Just a little bit of a trigger warning, some of the content in the story that I will share on here can be disturbing to some, and there will also be conversations around sexual violence and abuse of power. Starting off, who is P. Diddy? Formerly known as Sean Combs, but better known as P. Diddy, is an American rapper, record producer, entrepreneur, fashion mogul, and he emerged as a major figure in the music industry in the 1990s. He founded Bad Boy Records, a label that signed notable artists like Notorious B.I.G., Usher, and later on Mary J. Blige. He had hits that took off like I'll Be Missing You, which is inspired by B.I.G.'s passing, and his No Way Out and Forever albums. These won multiple music awards, including 3 Grammys. He was also involved in media and TV, like programs on MTV, and he also invested in brands like Revolt TV and Ciroc Vodka. For many years, he was a symbol for pop culture, and at one point, he was one of the wealthiest producers and artists in the hip-hop industry. And over his time and presence, he always had a big influence on both the music and entertainment industry. The first talks about P. Diddy parties and sexual assault allegations started emerging in the early 90s. The earliest cases have only recently been released following Diddy's arrest on September 16th of this year. Starting in the early 90s, a woman named Lisa Gardner alleged that Combs and a friend sexually assaulted her. A year after, in 1991, Joy Dickerson-Neal alleged that Combs drugged and sexually assaulted her, along with recording the attack and sharing it to others. From 1998 to 2009, a way that Combs and his publicist felt that it was best to gain attention and in hopes of remaining the leader and dominating the top spots in the music and entertainment industry was hosting really big parties at his properties in Beverly Hills, the Hamptons, and his New York apartment, where everyone had to wear strictly white. These parties coined the name white parties. They were these extravagant, over-the-top parties with A-list celebrities in attendance like Paris Hilton, a known party girl of the 2000s, Mariah Carey, Kim Kardashian, and a lot of known names within the entertainment industry and Hollywood. And in reports, multiple neighbors consistently called law enforcement to these parties as they were big, loud, and disturbed the peace. A former neighbor was interviewed, and they said that for the 6 to 7 years, there was just so many parties, back-to-back parties, very, very consistent and heavy partying. They also pointed out the fact that there were a lot of females in attendance, and many of these females were seen leaving the party without any knowledge of where they were and with their underwear showing, clearly lost or intoxicated. So that was kind of a little view into what was actually happening, but these interviews with these neighbors didn't catch much light until recently, but these elaborate parties slowly turned into a false display that was used to cover up explicit acts. Information released in a recent lawsuit filed against Combs about an incident gave us a small glimpse of what happened if you were invited to these parties and were not particularly a famous person. Now that's a really important part. It wasn't just A-list celebrities and big names in entertainment and music invited to these parties. There was strangers, I guess you could say, invited to these parties. A male who was 16 years old at the time of the incident in 1998 was invited to his first white party at Combs' mansion in the Hamptons. Keep in mind, this kid is 16. This kid was excited because the majority of these attendees were big names in both the music and entertainment industries, and he wanted to use this invite as an opportunity to build connections with these people in hopes of starting a music career. On his way to the bathroom, the male ran into Combs. After chatting briefly, they moved into a more private space. Combs stated that the teen had the right look, and that Combs had the ability to turn anybody into a star, which wasn't necessarily untrue considering the fact that he was the head of a really big record label that was signing multi-million-dollar artists, as well as him being an investor in multiple famous brands. Then the conversation between these two took a turn. Combs ended up asking this 16-year-old child, which, not to mention, if you think about it, it's already weird that he was invited considering the crowd at these parties and his age, because if it's adults who are famous in the entertainment industry, why the hell is a 16-year-old boy being invited here? Combs told this kid to drop his pants so that Combs could examine him. Combs described it to the male as a rite of passage for people that wanted to become rising stars. These parties then started becoming to what is known now as a freak-off. Sex parties with unwilling and vulnerable attendees, and the use of date-rape drugs was used in a way to coerce victims into unwanted sexual acts. Authorities described these parties as a way Combs was creating a criminal enterprise. He was also said to use abuse and threats to gain female victims that would fulfill his sick sexual desires. So far, there have been a dozen civil lawsuits filed against Combs with crimes including rape, assault, and sexual extortion. Within all the lawsuits, there was a point to be made that Combs was forcing and coercing people in unwanted sexual acts and activities. Combs was arrested on Monday, September 16th of 2024 on counts of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, and transportation for purposes of prostitution, which is illegal in the United States. While raiding Diddy's properties in both Miami and Los Angeles in March of 2024, authorities found firearms, ammunition, as well as 1,000 bottles of baby oil/lubricant. These were all believed to be used during his attacks and parties. And a conspiracy going around online is that he used the baby oil on his marble floors in his Hampton mansion to make sure people couldn't get out fast enough. Now, that's just a conspiracy theory, but I mean, considering the fact that this guy sexually assaulted a 16-year-old, I wouldn't put it past him to do something nuts like that. And here is where I want to get into discussing the pattern of sexual abuse in relation to people with fame, money, and power. Sean Combs and the P. Diddy parties are not the only time a celebrity has used their power to fulfill their own sexual desires. Some other famous, financially and culturally influential people that have been charged with sex crimes and sexual assault include, but is not limited to, Harvey Weinstein, one of the reasons the Me Too movement was started, Bill Cosby, Jeffrey Epstein, Danny Masterson, a guy who received 30 years to life in prison for raping 2 women, R. Kelly, Tupac Shakur, James Franco, Billy O'Reilly, Kevin Spacey. There is a clear problem here. Celebrities, particularly male celebrities with big names and a lot of money and power, and I mean like a lot of money, use their status and their power within the celebrity realm to get whatever the hell they want. And a lot of sexual crimes are committed by people with a lot of money and power because they believe that the victims won't speak up because of the threats that they make. There's also this culture of secrecy, especially in Hollywood culture, that has historically emphasized the reputation and image of certain people. And powerful figures, so P. Diddy, for example, work to maintain a quote, clean public persona for profit, because the cleaner you look and the better you are as a person in Hollywood, you are going to make more money because of that. And this leads to practices that hide and downplay these scandals to avoid negative press and financial loss. There's also things with legal settlements and NDAs. So when these allegations do surface, some studios and individuals will settle claims out of court, often with NDAs, so non-disclosure agreements, that stop these victims from speaking out publicly about their experiences, again, to protect the abuser's image. And this just creates a cycle where abuse is addressed privately. Now, if you listened to last week's episode, you would know that addressing abuse privately is not a way to resolve abuse, and it actually makes it worse. But the conversation around abuse in Hollywood tends to never become a broad conversation that could lead to industry-wide changes because of the power that people have. Also, just like domestic violence, there's a fear of retaliation. So speaking out against prominent figures can lead to serious consequences, both professionally and personally. Many fear potential retaliation, including being discredited or facing personal attacks that could impact their future opportunities or personal safety. So when you have someone who controls all of the music space in Hollywood in the early 90s and 2000s, and that person assaults you, but you are trying to have a career in music, you would most likely be threatened into not speaking out because of your dream that you are chasing. And that is a toxic culture that I believe needs to be broken in Hollywood, because that it's just not right. And like always, there is victim blaming culture. So not only in Hollywood, but just in the world in general, there's this thing that has been often perpetuated in our culture where victims are scrutinized and blamed rather than believed and supported. So this makes victims less likely to come forward, fearing that they will be dismissed, doubted, and misrepresented, especially when going up against people with a lot of money and who are adored by a bunch of people. It is a scary thing to do. When using the P. Diddy case as an example, there's a clear power imbalance and abuse of power. Diddy believed that he could get away with these crimes solely due to the fact that people looked up to him. He has a shit ton of money, and his famous status within the music and entertainment industry felt like a blanket and excuse for his crimes. When someone has the combination of money, power, and adoration, they think they're able to get away with serious crimes. And that narrative needs to change. And it only takes one voice. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Project Honesty. I know this was a little bit of a shorter one, but that's okay. You can find Project Honesty on Spotify at Project Honesty or on YouTube at Project_Honesty. And to keep up to date with new episodes, you can head over to Project Honesty's Instagram, which is at Project_Honesty24. Our TikTok is Project.Honesty. And we also have a website. The link for that website is in our Instagram bio. To help spread this podcast everywhere, tell a friend or share with family about Project Honesty, and you can direct them over to the Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, or website to help them learn more. Subscribe, follow, and click the bell icon for updates when I post, and remember, the more listeners, the bigger the family.